a country under Sharia law, $15 million. What did USAID do? They blew through my holds in complete and utter disregard of this committee's oversight responsibilities. I also uncovered the department had spent $500,000.
What's up, everybody? Cannon Hotep back at it again from the lair, from the Griff Cave.
In a country where
we're going to sit here and listen in on the USAID DOGE hearing
today. What does that have to do with advancing U.S. interest abroad?
Hopefully, we get some answers.
The Humanist International Group,
something
that they gave money
What's
to,
up, Josh?
$500,000.
I'm just saying.
The CEO called the Catholic Church an institution you should be ashamed to be involved with. Our taxpayer dollars to condemn the Catholic Church. Again, as a Catholic, I find that extremely offensive. And then the one we've heard so much about, $20,000 for drag shows and drag workshops in Ecuador. Mr. Chairman, I've seen the video you sent out. It is utterly disgusting to the American taxpayer that we are funding that kind of behavior. All these programs gave USAID a black eye. And that's unfortunate. Because you go back to the Marshall Plan, really the genesis for thinking about USAID. The Marshall Plan was one of the most successful programs we endeavored in after World War II to make sure a Hitler never rose from the ashes again. The Food for Peace program, sir, that you discussed, the American farmer benefits from this. It's been extremely successful. Why was USAID created in the first place in 1961? It was to counter the Soviet Union during the Cold War.
I don't think any of us really know anything about
I believe it still has a legitimate purpose to counter the rising threat of China and Belt and Road.
I got some stuff I got to do
and our other foreign adversaries. It also has the ability to counter terrorism. Lindsey Graham and I passed the Global Fragility Act. State, DOD, USAID, all working together.
Let's see if we get any trolls today. Let's see if we get any trolls today. Donald Trump's name's not in anything.
Destabilize nations, which breed terrorism. PEPFAR, one of the most successful global health programs ever developed under President Bush. Yet all of this is called into question because of the irresponsibility of the Biden administration's woke agenda and policies. Mr. Yoho, we've been friends. We work together, colleagues. Your greatest legacy is the BUILD Act, and we need to reinforce that policy as well. But when you look at the core mission, all these programs need to go, and they will be gone. But as we look at program by program and strip down to the core mission, do you still believe that this is a worthwhile endeavor, the core mission of USAID?
I do. I think what you see over a period of time is a mission creep. You know, these programs were designed with purity of purpose. This is what they're supposed to do. And when you get mission creep, you get these things that we're seeing, and they're indefensible, some of the programs that you guys mentioned. And that loses trust, like you said. And in business, what I've learned, and I think everybody can agree with this, people like to do business with people they know, they like, and they trust. If that's true with us on a business setting, it's the same in nations. If other nations know us, they like us, and they trust us, they're going to do business with us. And we've heard this over and over again. You know, it's been brought up by other leaders that.
And can I just ask my time? Sure. Is it in our national security interest to maintain the core mission? And I would argue under the State Department for proper supervision.
Yes, it is. And if we don't do that, we cede that leadership to other people.
I now recognize Ranking Member Meeks for 5 minutes.
Thank you. And I, too, am a chairman emeritus of this committee, and I can recall where President Trump, when he was the president, blew past some of my things that I wanted to hold. In fact, he's blown past some already in this term. So that's just the will of what presidents do at times in that regards. But in this instance, 93 missions, every one has been closed. Every one. That's not trying to fix something. That's destroying something. But let me.
But what are these missions? See, this is the thing. 93 missions blown through. What are these missions? What are these missions?
Mr.
We need to know.
Nassios
Give us some examples.
testify
Let us
here
determine
because
if
he
it
is a
sounds like some
lifelong
bullshit or not.
And he understands the insides and the outsides of running USAID. More so than anybody, no disrespect to anybody that's on this panel. He's the one that has done it.
That means he means
And
all
I
the
will
disrespect.
admit, we don't agree on certain things. Democrats and Republicans don't agree. Some things that Republicans do that I believe is full of waste, destructive, but if they win the elections, they have a choice to try to move it in that direction. When Democrats win, what we stand for, we move in our direction. That's part of having a free democratic society. We're not Russia. So I want to put the politics aside for this discussion.
All that politics you
And
just
ask
talked. Now you
Mr.
want to put it
Nassios,
aside.
can you explain to the committee why you believe foreign assistance and the work of USAID, as you've done so, is so essential, and you feel so passionately enough about it that you did respond? Because I've seen administrators, Democrats and Republicans alike, who have worked at USAID alike, come out against closing USAID. Can you tell us that today?
Well, let me tell you two stories. One story is my last month at AID. No one knew except my wife I was going to leave and teach at Georgetown. And this was December of 2005. And I always would get a briefing from the director of counterterrorism at the CIA. And he came in to see me and he said, Mr. Natsios, the chatter is you're coming and they're going to attempt to assassinate you. I said, who? He said, well, obviously the Taliban. I said, why are they going to assassinate me? Because you're the head of AID. They can't deal with AID. They can deal with the military. They just shoot each other. But they can't build health clinics. We built 400 health clinics. We got the child mortality rates and the maternal mortality rates down by a third.
Well, I feel like this cat.
It took 7 years to do that, but we
Well,
did
I feel
it very
like what he's saying
successfully.
is cap.
And we opened schools. We published 90 million textbooks in the schools to get the kids back in school. And the Taliban can't deal with that. They're going to try, and we advise you not to go. I said, well, let me think about that. But if you do go, announce you've arrived as you're stepping on the plane to leave. I said, what? He said, announce you're, when you're stepping on the plane to leave, announce you've arrived.
Oh,
In
no,
other
he
words,
was in
they won't
great
know you're
danger.
there. So I went, I decided to go, and nothing happened, and I did what he suggested. But what I found out was, from talking to the mullahs in the village, the religious leaders who were pro-democracy and pro-America, that the Taliban disregarded the greatest enemy of the Taliban was USAID. You know, in Kosovo, they named their kids USAID. They actually, the Albanians are Muslims in Kosovo, and that's Muslim. They made it into a
It's the
Muslim name,
House hearing
USAID.
on USAID.
If you go to the
DOGE
refugee
findings.
camps and displaced camps around the world, USAID is the image of the United States. We used to bring 20,000 students to the United States to get their advanced degrees during the Cold War. You know what the Chinese, you know what we're doing now? 900 scholarships. We stopped doing it. The Chinese are spending huge amounts of money to bring 40,000 people from the developing world to get their degrees in China. We should be investing in that. We're not. And I think we're falling behind, and we're focused on the wrong things.
we got our first troll.
The amount
in
of
the, first botany,
DEI stuff. I started going
in the
through
chat. I bet you can't find
RFAs.
communists.
It's a small percentage.
Guess what?
It is not accurate to say that this is, and some of these things that
Get
have been
outta here.
shown, those are not AID projects. Those are State Department programs. Why are you blaming
We ain't got time for it
AID for
today.
what the State Department did? The F office in state controls all this stuff. Now let me tell you a second story. After the Aceh tsunami, we did a huge response. Aceh is a part of Indonesia, which had a Muslim insurgency for many years against the central government. We did a huge response. We put the aid logo on everything. The mission director got carried away, 50,000 stickers,
Hey, what's going
USAID
on,
from the
Lamar?
American people. Before the Aceh tsunami, bin Laden had a 57% approval rating in Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the world and a democracy. After it, he collapsed from 57% to 27%. We had a 26% approval rating. We went from 26% to 63%. Now you say, Americans like to be liked. We all like to be liked. But what difference does it make? President Uduono, the president of the country, said, I like President Bush. I like the United States, but it's very hard to work with you because you're so unpopular. Not after the Aceh tsunami. The newspapers in Indonesia said, where is bin Laden? When we need him. The Americans here we really don't like, and now we realize who our real friends are.
Thank you for answering our questions today, sir. We appreciate it. We agree. A lot of waste, like $10 million through USAID. Everything I listed was USAID. $10 million for circumcision in Mozambique. There's another example for you. I now recognize Mr. Smith from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Upon assuming office, President Biden repealed President Ronald Reagan's Mexico City policy, expanded by President Donald Trump in 2017. But the Biden administration didn't stop there. They initiated a new, radical vision that integrated aggressive abortion on demand into PEPFAR programming, called it Reimagining PEPFAR, that included explicit guidance directing recipients, and this is billions of dollars of U.S. taxpayer funds, to use their leverage to enact pro-abortion laws and policies in PEPFAR countries. Biden hijacked PEPFAR. And he shattered, I did the reauthorization of PEPFAR for 5 years during the Trump administration, the first one. I'm all for it. In this place here and on the floor of the House and all over Africa as I traveled, all for it. But then it was hijacked. In a strong rebuke, and Mr. Max had mentioned this earlier, 131 African lawmakers and religious leaders said that the PEPFAR funding is supporting abortion, and they admonished us to say the NGOs that we finance are hijacking their ideals by pushing it so aggressively in Africa. Mr. Natsios, you testified today, and I read your written statement,
called him Mr. Nazi.
that USAID needs to be refashioned.
Mr. Natsios
and you
or something
said
like that,
quote, you believe it is bad policy to transfer domestic culture wars into politics to the developing world. Do you believe that the Biden administration was wrong to integrate abortion on demand into global health? Because they did it across the board, USAID, and of course PEPFAR. Much of that money is deployed through USAID. When you did say that efforts to protect the weakest and most vulnerable from extermination, I do believe that's trivialized when you somehow bottom line it and say it's a culture war. We believe in defending unborn children and their mothers from the violence of abortion. It's not a culture war. It is a fact when they're in these countries pushing it, that unfortunately children will die. I and like-minded pro-life advocates in Congress and around the world seek to protect unborn baby girls and boys from violence of abortion, including dismemberment, decapitation, and of course the abortion pills, which are now being pushed all over the world, including the United States. How do they work? They starve the baby to death.
Yo, I saw
That's
a Plan
how it
B
works.
pill commercial
So
on my
I'm all for
son's
global, we did two
YouTube Kids
I was the prime
commercial
sponsor of it, Global Food Security
yesterday.
Act.
He was watching
You know,
something
I'm
on
all
YouTube
for
Kids about
mitigating global hunger. But when you turn around and say
tarantulas or something,
to an
and
entire
there was a
segment
Plan
of
B
humanity,
pill commercial that
unborn
popped up.
children,
I'm like, what
we're
the
going to
fuck
starve you
is
to
this?
death through these abortion pills. To me, that's unconscionable. So do you agree that pro-abortion NGOs should continue to be empowered and subsidized with billions of dollars each year by the American taxpayer to promote abortion with the goal of changing pro-life laws in these nations? And I would ask all three of our witnesses.
Congressman, you can check my voting record in Massachusetts. I 100%, and in Massachusetts, this is in Massachusetts.
Yeah, it was his YouTube. It was a YouTube Kids account.
Pro-life voting record for 12
One I
years
made
in the
for him.
House. So my position is very clear, and I took a lot of heat
It's
from
crazy.
the feminist groups in Massachusetts, and my views have not changed.
Yeah, so I logged him into my premium
because we
so he
found
don't
them
get
doing
those ads and
vaginal
shit.
scraping in
I
Bangladesh
was like,
in a
yo, hell
remote
no.
village, and the mission director called me immediately. He said, "We discovered this. We put a stop to it, Andrew, because if you do that and the woman is pregnant, the child dies." Okay, and you're supposed to check before you do it. They weren't trained properly. They weren't doing it maliciously. They just didn't understand because they weren't trained properly. We fixed it very quietly. I called you up and told you what happened. We were being
That's a fact.
transparent about it. Other than that, That's the only violation we had in the 5 years that I was aid administrator. The career people will do what they're told to do. I am appalled at what you're telling me that they have done. And by dragging AID into these culture wars, the Biden administration has undermined the need for bipartisan support for AID.
I wish it was a real day off.
We cannot tolerate in
got a family
an
thing I gotta take
agency
care of.
with programs all over the world a war between parties, which I'm seeing right now. In my view, it's a failure. All of the things I did at AID, I tried to do it in a way that would not alienate the Democratic Party when I left. If you look before they took apart the agency, everything I created is still there, was still there. They left it in place.
Thank you. I'm almost out of time. The other two distinguished witnesses. Thank you, Andrew.
Congressman, everything that
See,
we
that
did
guy, like, he
during the
seemed
first
reasonable a little bit when he gave his
administration,
introductory speech.
decisions,
He seemed like he was pretty reasonable in the stuff that he was putting in the USAID. But what it seemed like is in the last 15 years or so, it started getting bastardized. They started taking those things and then put, like Shay said, start pushing some nefarious loopholes through it, which is fucked up. You know what I mean? And that's the issue.
Themselves tell you it's happening, then the law is being broken. I hope that the second Trump administration pursues the pro-life policies that it had in the first one, but also to include humanitarian assistance. Thank you.
When we set these policies forward, it's going to behoove all of us, and this is hard to do. These policies should be what's best for America. If it's best for America, it's going to be best for the rest of the world. And those policies are based on our beliefs as a nation. If we're a Christian nation, as we always talk about, that's the right thing to do. And I think we need to stay that way. And the hard part is, with us in this body, we have to keep the checks on that. If not, it goes away. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I'm glad to hear the conversation about university spending as well, because there's a lot of that within USAID also. $42 million for Johns Hopkins to research and drive social behavior, and $250,000 for FIU for DEI training.
See, the thing about USAID is this.
$244,000 for Stanford.
Not everything in it is nefarious, right? Most things start off being, with good intentions, but absolute power
Foreign aid
corrupts
is a good
absolutely, and it's easier to push
Americans
an agenda
think that we
with
spend
something
25% of
that
the
sounds
federal
so
budget
benevolent as USAID,
on foreign
right?
aid and want it reduced to
Now,
10%.
I'll pause it
But
real
the
quick so I
fact
can get
is-
this off. So, like, the way I feel like USAID should be used is like this, because international development, right? Meaning that they're supposed to be helping nations get off the ground or helping them with certain things that otherwise they couldn't do for themselves, assuming, right? If you're going to do international development, that's like agriculture, right? That's businesses, right? If you're going to put up a hospital, but not with the stipulation of like, this is an abortion clinic. No. If it's a fucking clinic, it's just a fucking clinic. And you let that country run it based off of the morals and the ethics of that country. Right? You can't go in there and put an abortion clinic in fucking Afghanistan. Yeah, they're going to want to hunt you down. But this is the other thing, right? With that being said, we got problems here. Right? USAID could have started giving money to help make people whole in North Carolina and Tennessee and Georgia and Florida after the hurricane. They could be helping people get made whole in California after these wildfires, but that's not what it is. See, what the thing is that as good intention as the name USAID sounds, it's been co-opted and it's got insurgents in it now where they're taking that money and they're using that money as a CIA slush fund to overthrow leaders and start to push quote unquote democracy in these other countries. Start to install U.S. puppets that's going to do our bidding. That's what that is. You got to read between the lines a lot of the times with some of this stuff. Like I said before, it could be a Save the Puppies Act, right? And everybody's like, oh, who wouldn't be against it? Who's against Save the Puppies? Who's against Save the Puppies? But like on page 666, it'll say that you can take the fucking disabled puppies and use them for fucking clinical trials. And you'd be like, well, I thought you said it was Save the Puppies. Why are you gassing them? You know what I mean? But that's how they do it on the back end. They make it seem like when you hear it on his face, it seems really, you know, virtuous. But then when you get into the meat and potatoes of it, it's like, yo, why are we sending money for this? Right? We've heard some of the spending that USAID has, right? You know, oh, they sent $1 million for a trans comic book. Oh, they spent $300,000 on a LGBTQ play in some fucking war-torn country. Like, that's crazy to me. Oh, they gave $38 million to that lab over there in China. Now, everybody was like, oh, the Gaza thing has been debunked. Okay, yeah, they didn't give $50 million of condoms to Gaza. They gave it to fucking Mozambique. I'm sorry, it wasn't the Gaza Strip, it was Mozambique. But $50 million for fucking condoms to Mozambique, fucking Gaza, I don't care what country it is. That's fucking crazy. That's fucking crazy. Then just last week, you find out $59 million to hotels in New York for illegals. That's the problems. We're not talking about the shit that actually might, you're like, oh, I can get behind that. We're talking about the other malevolent, other malfeasance that's going on in USAID. That's the problem. Now, like I said, that guy Nacios, he seemed like maybe when he was in there, he might have been on the level. But there are people above him that takes the reins and they control shit. And they got agendas. And they use USAID to complete some of those agendas that they had. So, like, if we're going to have USAID, it needs to be used, you know, for shit that's like international development. Okay, they want to start farms in this country. Not, oh, we don't like this leader. Let's oust this leader and install a leader that's going to work with us. That's not how that shit should work. And that's how USAID's been working. So anyway, let's get back to it.
It's way less than 1%. It helps us challenge China in the world. It reduces not only hunger but migration to our borders. And it helps us fight communicable diseases over there before they mutate and come here. And that's why Ronald Reagan recognized the importance of foreign aid.
That's a good question, Chris.
Mr.
It seems
Chairman,
like they had
my
an unlimited
fear, 'cause
pocketbook.
I've been here for a long time. When I got here, it wasn't just Democrats against Republicans. It was the legislative branch against the executive branch. And we need to play that role.
That's perfect,
And as
Holden. That's
the
a
ranking
perfect,
member points out,
quote.
we need to have government witnesses here so we can talk about the future rather than just be a cheering squad for the executive branch. But I want to bring to your attention, Mr. Chairman, an action taken by the State Department today that was too woke for Sherman.
What up, Nas?
They announced that they're going to spend $400 million on zero greenhouse gas emitting armored cars. That's right,
true.
electric armored cars. $400 million to replace perfectly good gas-driven
What's up, Senator?
armored cars. They said they were going to be Tesla Cybertruck armored cars. This administration will get too woke for Sherman if it helps the shareholders of the Tesla automobile. There have been a number of falsehoods stated. The biggest one is the $50 million for Gaza condoms. Musk admitted that it was just completely false. He apologized. So that he made him, DOGE.
He didn't admit it was false. It was to Mozambique and Jordan, I think it was. It was to two different other countries. $50 million. Two different other countries. It wasn't, he got the location wrong. But the money still went to another country. It don't matter what country the money for condoms went to. An astronomical amount of money for condoms went to a country which it shouldn't have done in the first place. He's being dishonest.
Made a mistake. Are we going to terminate DOGE? Well, I'd like to, but we're going to terminate DOGE because it made one mistake? No. You identify mistakes that are a lot less than $50 million, people want to terminate USAID. Musk statement he should be apologizing for and publicizing because the truth has a tough time catching up with the falsehood. But let's go through a few others. We're told that there's $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt.
You tell me how I'm
Mr.
being
Nassios,
dishonest,
you
Edward Myers. Let
demonstrate
me know.
how that's a good program. We should give credit to Donald Trump for that program. He started it under his first administration. Now it's being attacked. We're told that circumcision is terrible. It's a very cheap operation. It's only done voluntarily. It's been done by Democratic and Republican administrations, including Trump. Why? Because it's a 60% reduction in the risk of female-to-male transmission of HIV. We were told that USAID was spending $80 million on subscriptions to Politico. No, the entire executive branch was doing that. But you know who else spends money on Politico? Republicans in Congress who spend $800,000 of their office budget on Politico.
That's still a fucking problem. That's all. I would argue that that's worse. Right? Now, I corrected the record on that. I think that USAID gave like $2.4 million to Politico. Why is Politico getting any government funding, period? That sounds like state-sponsored media to me. That shit needs to be killed. I don't care what side that's on. He's making no points here.
And Mr. Chairman, you didn't spend any
What's
money
up,
on
kid?
Politico like me. You spent your money on on Bloomberg.
Go back and listen to the press conference in the Oval Office, Edward. They said Mozambique and they said Jordan. The news anchor said it when she corrected Elon. She said Mozambique and Jordan. So yes, $50 million for condoms did go to 2 countries.
As do I. Of course, Michael Waltz spent his money, over $8,000, on Politico just for his own office. The list goes on and on. But we are told that there's waivers for all this. Well, PEPFAR has been allowed to work, but they have no access to funds. But what doesn't get a waiver is democracy programs, and we need democracy in Iran. Education.
That's the shit that it irks me. We need democracy in Iran. No, we need to let Iran run Iran the way they run Iran. That's none of our fucking business. That's the equivalent to a fucking crusade to me. They need democracy in Iran. No. We don't need to push our values and shit onto Iran. We don't. Why are we? He's telling you this quiet shit out loud. We need democracy in Iran. No, we don't. And U.S. aid should not be out there trying to push democracy in Iran. This is what I just said. They're funding regime change. Preferably with people that'll get along with us. They say it under the guise of democracy. Democracy. No, you want regime change. And it ain't the first time that USAID would have overthrown a leader.
Programs and economic development. So it's okay under Trump to give a hungry man a fish, but it's illegal to spend $1 to teach him to fish or to tell him how to get a fishing.
Do we really think USAID is teaching people how to fish, or are they giving people fish? They giving people fish. They giving people they giving people fish under with conditions. They giving people fish with conditions. It's okay to teach a man to fish, but we can't give a man $1. No, we can't. No.
Pole. And under that, we'll be feeding hungry Egyptians forever because they won't have the tourism so that they can buy their food on the world market. We need education. We need democracy. We need economic development. Finally, there's a sad incident. 71-year-old Pei Kao Lau. She was able to survive and flee from Myanmar to Thailand. She was in a camp with over 10,000 people. They cut off the money and they cut off her oxygen, and she died. And no future waiver is going to bring her back to life. Mr. Chairman, I ask that this committee take a minute
That's
of
a good
silence
question, Rudy. I don't think it was for condoms either.
to remember Pei
That was just what was
Kao
on the memo.
Lau.
Gentleman's time has expired, and I would also point out that PEPFAR care and treatment, HIV
That's a
prevention, their PEPFAR programs have been reauthorized for $500 million and other appropriations as well, just in case you were not aware. We now
That's a
recognize
fact.
Mr. Wilson,
Mr.
South
Chairman?
Carolina.
Sorry, a fact. We don't owe
Mr.
them
Wilson
shit.
is recognized.
Thank you very much, Chairman Brian Mast, and thank you for your leadership on this very important hearing. In the past, I have supported the very inspiring messages and missions of American outreach. I have, though, sounded the alarm for abuse and wasteful spending in aid programs, sadly, for years. We've routinely seen aid diverted to dictators such as Assad of Syria and oppressing the very people it was meant to help. The Biden administration insanely provided and funded woke, deranged depravity in Syria instead of trying to help the people, and the UN delivered aid through the regime itself to the people as they were being slaughtered by Bashar al-Assad. Legitimate aid was diverted from the needed earthquake recovery that occurred there in Syria. Fortunately, Assad is now removed by the people of Syria, and he is in hiding, of course, in the appropriate location, Moscow.
I'm
with
all for
war criminal
defunding
Putin.
NPR.
Another example, Mr. Primarak, is the tragic example of dictator diversion, and that is in Tunisia.
That's true, Happy Love.
Once a
Talked about that
shining
yesterday.
success of the Arab Spring and partner
Social
in North
promotion.
America, it's now
Leave
been
no
turned
child
into
behind.
a full-blown dictatorship by Qais Said. While Millennium Challenge Corporation rightfully suspended aid, USAID sent $30 million to cover unclear programs while the dictator has corrupted the economy, destroying jobs. What can be done to stop propping dictators and also aid being diverted, as you correctly identified, even to terrorists themselves? Mr. Primarak?
Yes, sir. I'm not familiar with the situation in Tunisia, but this happens a lot. I think there's a lot of goodwill in these programs. There's a lot of good programs overall. But the problem is that very often these things just go on year after year after year, and then there's no changes. We're actually propping up bad regimes and socialism. I was in Mozambique in October for the elections there. We have a Marxist Leninist regime. They stole the election. We're spending $1 billion, $500 million to $1 billion a year. And then what happens? There's no reform. We're supporting socialism. And the government, just 2 months before we came there, provided their port in order to allow the Chinese Navy to project their power into the Western Indian Ocean. So there has to be a much better affinity between what we do on the development aid side and the diplomacy, where we put our ambassadors on the hook to make sure these things don't happen. Thank you.
And indeed, we've seen in the Republic of Georgia the corrupted election of October, where the legitimate president, Salome Zurishvili, has been replaced by a Georgian dream, which, as you identify, ports. Indeed, the Chinese Communist Party has taken over the port there in Georgia on the Black Sea. And simultaneously, the Georgian dream dictatorship in Tbilisi has reached out to work closely with Tehran at the same time as Tehran has sent assassins to murder Donald Trump. With that in mind, thank goodness we have good people like our congressional alumnus, Ted Yoho, here. And so, Ted, delivery mechanisms for aid have been co-opted by enemies of the United States running the UN. Fortunately, President Trump has appointed Elise Stefanik as the UN ambassador in the tradition of Ambassador Nikki Haley, who will stand firm for America first. Many of the nonprofits that are doing the bidding of dictators are being supported. What can we do to ensure that indeed these agencies are working for the people we're trying to help and not prop up dictators or support terrorists?
I think the biggest thing is just
wish I got
oversight, and we need to follow up on the oversight. We hear every year how many erroneous spending programs there are, how money's being wasted. We hear those reports, but yet when I was in Congress, I didn't see us acting. It was hard to get everybody to act. And that's where I go back to the purity of purpose and what is the mission. We have to stay within those guardrails, and we need to make sure, well, the body of Congress needs to make sure that they stay that way. And it's a tough thing. And, if it was a static world, it would be easy, but it's a tough world.
And also in the best Florida
Hey, Adam,
tradition,
I'm trying to check. I'm trying to track where you're coming from.
Marco Rubio has
give
announced
me a
just last
brief
week a great
little
letter
description of what you think
to
about
Chairman
this
Mast
USAID.
about how they would be stepping in to identify programs and promote those that promote the people of legitimately in the world.
By the
who
way,
need
if y'all
it.
new, hit the
I yield
subscribe
back.
button, hit the like button.
Thank you, Representative Wilson. Now recognize
We got
Representative
80
Key.
in the room right now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I welcome two of my former colleagues here, Ted Yoho, who is one of the more
Appreciate it, bro.
conservative people I served with here in Congress, and Andrew Natsios, who I think is the most conservative member I served with in the Massachusetts House as a Republican, and Republican leader in Massachusetts as well. I think that what we're seeing with our witnesses like this, is the fact that up until 3 weeks ago,
we see
this
what's coming out,
issue,
and
the USAID, used to be the
we
most
see what's coming out, and
bipartisan
it's kind
issue.
of concerning,
And I've been
right?
on this
Where
committee
our
now for
tax dollars
14
going?
years
Maybe there's
plus.
some
We used to agree with
benevolent
these
things they're
We could
doing,
find
but there are a
things
lot of things on the
wrong
back
with
end
it
that they're
we can
doing where our
correct.
money
And the
should not be
irony
going.
of all this
you
is
know?
this: the Republicans are in charge of the White House, the House, and the Senate. They have the power to do this the right way. They have the power of oversight to look at all the things that are being pointed out. That's your responsibility if you don't like it, and you have the power to do it. You don't need this draconian executive directive to do it. It's causing chaos, not just here in this country, but around the world. It's not necessary, and it's a huge departure from everything I've seen occurring in the 14 years before this. Along those lines, I'd like to submit, Mr. Chairman, a letter to the Republican
That's true. Yeah, that's what I'm
and
saying.
Democratic
I
leadership
think it's
in the
more
House
money
and the
laundering than
Senate. And it's from almost 150 former
noble missions.
administrative officials, Republicans and Democrats, those who served in the military and the State Department, and urging the rescission of the Trump executive orders aimed at freezing our foreign
it's 100%
assistance
a lie.
and dismantling
50 million,
USAID.
They said 50 million went to for condoms,
Deplores
but we know 50
the
million went to somebody's
undemocratic
pocket.
and unconstitutional
They just the
dismantling
memo said
of
condoms.
these agencies.
They just made
I'd
that
like
shit
to
up on the
submit this
fly.
for the record with unanimous consent. And I'd also like to point out some other correspondence that occurred around this issue. The people that praised this action, where did they come from? I'll tell you where they came from. They came from our greatest critics, the greatest critics of democracy right now in the world. They came from the leaders of Russia and
Here we go.
Hungary and
Here we go.
Venezuela.
Here we go.
They're praising this effort. That's who's for this effort. In fact, the Speaker of the Russian State Duma said that anyone who received funding from USAID should be made to publicly confess and repent on Red Square. That's who's praising this.
He just named all people they would love to
That's
overthrow
who's
right
happy
now.
with this.
He just named
Who's
He
happy
just named
with
people
this?
that they would love to overthrow right now.
This is so important now in Ukraine. One example,
Here we go,
Putin's
Ukraine.
primary target in Ukraine is to destroy the electrical grid, to use that as an energy weapon of war against the Ukrainians in his illegal aggression. And what does USAID do? They're helping to train and give the resources so that the Ukrainians can repair these damaged electrical grids so they can keep the power on and fight Putin.
All right, so if that's the truth, all right, if that's what you're saying, sir, if that's what you're saying, why your boy Zelensky come out and say, yeah, we only got 77 fucking billion of the 175 billion that you guys allotted to us. We don't know where the other 100 billion is. See, that's shit that should give people pause. Right now, he just got a whole word salad rocking around. He out here, first off, he's using buzzwords, he's using leaders that we already know the United States wants to get out of the paint and install their own people. Now he's going with the Ukraine shit. But we all know now that most of the money that was allotted to Ukraine didn't get. So where'd that money go? Who got that? But you have people that listen to this guy and go, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, you got to question a lot of the shit that they be saying.
Putin's happy with this. I mentioned the military leaders. General Mattis, who is also Secretary of Defense under Donald Trump, he used to come to this committee time and time again and say, don't fully fund these programs like USAID. And you know what? If you don't fund it, just buy me some more ammunition. The military in our country understand the importance of this program. I've had discussions for years, and I just recently had discussions with our special operations forces. Those people, I respect them beyond words. They are in the most dangerous parts of the world, in small numbers,
Rudy
a
said he
global
on the
footprint,
list.
working to know where our greatest threats are in the country. They're placed in positions hosting the most dangerous threats to our country, as are so many people working for USAID, risking their lives as well, trying to secure the safety of people, not just in the world, but in our own country, from terrorist threats that are metastasizing and pose increasing threats right here back at home. They told me
I bet
of the
USAID
importance
helped
of
Claudia Sheinbaum get in
They
office.
told me how they work
Bet
together
we'll probably find that shit out.
on security issues, on intel issues, on understanding how they can use their ability to keep us safe and use it more effectively. And they particularly pointed out what a threat China is, and it'll become a greater threat in the absence of USAID. That's who's asking us not to make these draconian changes. And, you know, do it the right way. All those things you do, all the little small cuts. I won't say anything
That's
about
who's
circumcisions
asking
being a
us
small
not to
cut.
make these
Listen,
draconian changes. He
all
just
these
used the
small
word
cuts.
draconian.
You have the power to do it yourself. Do it. Do it the right way. Don't support this. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Massachusetts. We will write $10 million of foreskin out of the budget. I now recognize Representative Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. USAID was created through executive
That's
order in
funny.
1961 by President Kennedy, long having lost and strayed from its mission, lost its direction. Even the Clinton administration tried unsuccessfully to reform it. And we spend, I don't know, somewhere between $40 and $50 billion annually on this organization. And with the things that you hear, well, many of us, probably most of us in this room, agree with projecting America's power for the good of all the world around the globe. Quite honestly, if our enemies were asked to design a foreign aid program that would actively undermine the United States of America at maximum cost to the taxpayer, they would be hard-pressed to create a scheme more
hit that like button, hit
than
that subscribe button. Help me get to
USAID.
5,000. Help me get to 5,000 subs.
That's
You wanna
shocking
know
to
what
say,
I do?
but
Go back and check out my channel after this.
It's
live streams,
look, let's
rants,
just go to a couple things
shorts.
here.
I'm sure you'll
We
like it
left
all.
Afghanistan, and I'll just characterize it as
What up,
left
David?
in August of 2021. August of 2021. So the Taliban's in charge. Taliban threatens the lives of the NGO personnel distributing USAID. They claim credit for USAID distribution. They interfere with the distribution of USAID aid. They tax the beneficiary of the aid. They tax the delivery service. They steal the food commodities. They divert the funds. They extort citizens for protection
I can
for
get behind that, Rudy.
USAID aid. They create sham procurement schemes, and they threaten the lives of those who oppose those schemes. Now, that all occurred before August of 2021, when we were there. When we were there. Now, you know, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. You could just read the Taliban is classified, and if you don't know, the Taliban's in charge of Afghanistan. They're classified as a specially designated global terrorist organization by OFAC. So post-2021, so this is last year, 2024, we spent $697 million of the taxpayers' dollars in Afghanistan, including $534,719,000 in change from USAID in Afghanistan. I don't know what we think we're going to change in Afghanistan. We lost 22,000, lost or wounded 22,500 Americans in Afghanistan over the course of our term there in the war, spending over $2 trillion. We're just going to keep on spending because somehow we think it's going to get better. And if you're wondering who's in charge of Afghanistan getting the money, and that money I just mentioned, the $697 million is on top of, and is in addition to the weekly to every 10-day shipments in cash of $40 to $80 million. Afghanistan is ruled by folks named Sarajuddin Haqqani. The Haqqani network mean anything to anybody in the room? How about
I agree.
Abdullah bin Laden, who gets some of that money? Does that name ring a bell to anybody in the room? Because your money, $697 million annually, plus the shipments of cash funds madrasas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, ISIS Khorasan, terrorist training camps. That's what it's funding. If you think that the program under Operation Enduring Sentinel, entitled Women's Scholarship Endowment, which receives $60 million annually, or the Young Women Lead, which gets about $5 million annually, is going to women who, by the way, if you read the Inspector General's report, is telling you that the Taliban does not allow women to speak in public. Yet somehow you're believing, and American people are supposed to believe, that this money is going for the betterment of the women in Afghanistan. It is not. You are funding terrorism, and it's coming through USAID. And it's not just Afghanistan, because Pakistan's...
Jimmy Wong says, if you billionaire, you can run America. No shit, Jimmy. I mean, Bill Cooper been told you. There are a bunch of billionaires, not just American billionaires. We talk about they, them, the collective all over the world, right? Davos, right? Bilderberg Group, right? They all meet once a year in some special place to decide what the script is for the next 4 years. These billionaires run the world. Great show to go watch is Paradise on Hulu. You'll get an understanding on how that shit works. President of the United States is just a face. The real power is in Congress. However, we got a president in office right now that's bucking the system, and they don't like it. They don't like it. He is fucking with their pocketbook. He is fucking with their piggy bank. He is fucking with their petty cash, and they don't like that shit. Gotta pay attention. Gotta pay attention.
It's right next door. USAID spent $840 million in the last 20 years on Pakistan's education-related program. It includes $136 million to build 120 schools, of which there is zero.
I like that, Rudy. Saudis and the Israelis are going to split Gaza up. The Saudis ain't Muslim. I hope y'all know that, right? Everybody think the Saudis, the House of Saud, are like true Islam. Nah, they not. They not. They in lockstep with Israel. Understand that.
Zero evidence that any of them were built. Why would there be any evidence? The Inspector General can't get in to see them. But you know what? We doubled down and spent $20 million from USAID to create educational television programs for children unable to attend the physical school. Yeah, they can't attend it because it doesn't exist. You paid for it. Somebody else got the money. You are paying for terrorism. This has got to end. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Perry. In addition,
You're right, you are.
we don't even have
we're paying for terrorism. Iran-Contra probably was fucking funded through USAID. Gaddafi's fucking assassination probably funded through that shit.
I know a lot of USAID workers, former workers, alumni are watching this hearing. I want to thank them for their work. They're patriotic Americans. They're out there. They're doing God's
I'm
work,
all for that.
helping save
I'm all
lives
for that
and
one.
everything else. And I'm sorry that you guys are caught up in this. So I want to appreciate this on behalf of the United States of America. You guys are patriotic Americans. I've visited with a lot of these folks. I travel a lot, gone into refugee camps, and have seen what they do in terms of life-saving stuff. And again, it's super important work that they do. It represents the best of American values, and it is really sad to see these folks get thrown under the bus. When we talk about stronger, better, more prosperous, I think we're all in favor of that. We're all in favor of working together. You know,
Their mistress.
Mr. Chairman, Congressman Yoho's my classmate, and he may have been more conservative than you when he got to Congress. Ted, you and I traveled, I think, on your first
No, I
trip
don't think so,
abroad.
Dario. I don't know what to think about Elon there, Dario.
We went out and saw some of these
I
USAID projects.
Right now, I think he's doing us a great service right
I
now by
watched you
exposing some
over
of this
time,
shit.
you know,
At least
become
it's
the
got the
champion
American
of the Build
citizens
Act,
looking
the
at
champion of reforms.
the
and
government with a
continue to stay in
microscope now.
touch.
It's got
Now,
eyes on
what
it.
saddens me about
Just
this
saying.
whole approach, now I'm not going to talk about Elon Musk. I'm not surprised by how he's approaching things, but this isn't Twitter. I don't want a 21-year-old tech bro going through deciding which programs we should continue and not continue. Mr. Chairman, I want us to work and do that work. We can go line by line, or we could hire Mr. Yoho to go through line by line and say, hey, here's the programs that make sense, here's the ones that don't. But that's our job. That's what we're supposed to be doing. That's our oversight. I don't want that 21-year-old tech.
So why haven't you been doing it, Mr. Barra? Why haven't you been doing that? Why take for a disruptor to come in and start looking at your fucking books for you guys to want to get all defensive and start trying to correct course? We could just get Mr. whoever the fuck he said his name was to do this and say, hey, this is this. First off, I don't trust the government. First off, Mr. whoever the fuck he said, he would be the equivalent of Elon. He's not a government official. He used to be. He's former. He's former. I don't trust the government to audit itself. I don't trust the government to hold itself accountable for malfeasance because it's going to try to hide it at every fucking step of the way. You need an outsider to do that shit. Now, is Elon the right outsider? I don't know. But he's exposed some shit that had people got motherfuckers thinking. He's exposed some shit that got motherfuckers thinking. Shit that we would have never found out about. Think about that. If it wasn't for Elon, no matter what you think about him, going in there and looking at the books, all this shit would have kept going. All of this malfeasance would have kept going. All of this money laundering would have kept going. Nobody would have been the wiser. The American citizens, we would have just been like, well, yeah. We'd have had no clue. They'd have still kept laundering money through Ukraine. Bullshit grants so people can get money put in their pockets. You ever heard like a grant, the name of a grant or the reason why they gave grant money to somebody? You just go, ain't no way they gave that much money to figure that shit out. Nah, that shit going to somebody's pocket. But why, sir, haven't you guys done that shit already? Now you want to come up with solutions on how to keep the government accountable. Because you got a disruptor coming in there fucking showing you guys a fucking mirror to hold up a mirror to you. Like I said yesterday, Elon is that fucking he's the girlfriend who snatched your fucking phone and ran in the bathroom and locked the door. Now you and that bitch pounding on the door like, why are you going through my phone? He done found out everything you've been doing, and all you can say is, why are you going through my phone? Trying to deflect. That's what this is. That's all this is.
Bro probably has never traveled anywhere, has no passport, doing our job. Let's do this work together. And I'm not here to defend every USAID program.
Why the richest man in the world getting U.S. subsidies?
A
I don't
really
know.
important purpose for our
You
values.
got to ask Elon that.
Yeah,
You also got to ask
we've
Jeff
read Heritage
Bezos.
Foundation
We went
reports.
through this before already.
I worry about what's happening in the Pacific Islands. They put out a good report. We've met with them.
I agree, Dan.
We're ceding our influence there. We're already seeing China step in and take things over.
Here, Kevin
We're
Hill,
watching it in Cambodia
all
and
the
Southeast
experts.
Asia.
You believe the
Programs are
experts,
good
Kevin?
Programs like demining.
Huh? You believe the experts, Kevin? Well, you pick and choose when you want to believe the quote unquote experts. It's funny how a lot of people, I don't know Kevin, but I'm sure Kevin probably was one of them, we can't trust the government motherfuckers. Now all of a sudden he want to trust the experts. It's like when COVID hit. Black folks, oh, Tuskegee experiments, fuck black people up. Da, 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 da. Then here come COVID. Dr. Fauci done spit some bullshit to you. Now you want to trust the experts. At the bare minimum, you should be wondering what the fuck. At the bare minimum, you should be wondering if the shit is correct. And I would argue to say that the shit that Elon's bringing out is correct because they're not even attacking the shit that's coming out for the most part. They're attacking the fact that he's even allowed to expose them. That's when you know they fucking up against a rock and a hard place. If you got caught, you got caught doing some shit, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, you got me. Well, you're gonna do your best to get the fuck out of that. Because that's what they doing. That's all this hearing's been so far.
China stepped in, it's front page news. Let's not shut everything down. Let's make necessary reforms. Let's, Congressman Yo said, let's focus on humanitarian aid, let's focus on development, and let's look at the programs that do this. For the American people, the most successful development program
It's all public
in the history of
information,
the
but
world was
nobody
the
wants
Marshall Plan.
to
That was us. That was the United States of America rebuilding
nobody wants to go
Europe,
look at it. But
creating stable
Elon's like, here you go, I'll read it for you.
war, lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. That was us. We can do this, and we can do it better and smarter and not betray our values as Americans. But we should do this. This is Congress's job. It's not someone else's job. And I'm willing to work with you to figure out what programs make sense. Let's write a foreign aid authorization bill. But let's do it in a smart way. Let's get former administrators in here. Let's us do the work. Democrats and Republicans.
Now, see, this is the nonsense
to
right
rebuild.
here. And he broke into your online banking and transferring your money into his account. That's the ridiculous speculation right there. That's the ridiculous speculation right there. See, at least the shit that you're hearing on the news that they're saying that they're finding, you can go look and fact check it and see if it's true. But then you got shit like this, and he broke into your online account and is transferring your money. It's a horrible argument. It's a terrible argument. What you guys are doing when you do shit like this is that you're throwing bail to the American, you're throwing bail to the government. You're throwing bail to the government. You give me, where's the proof of fraud? You give me, again, you show me your proof that he's stealing money. He's telling you the federal government's been stealing your tax dollars, and that's your answer. We've done multiple videos on this. There are multiple things that's coming out in the news that they're saying that they expose. Go look it up and see if it's true or not. See, the thing is this. This should be fucking getting your spidey senses up and running. Is this what they're really doing with my tax dollars? Did they really do that? The list is out there that they found the quote unquote malfeasance with USAID and all these other government agencies. They're out there. Why don't you go look at the list and then figure out if they're doing that shit or not? Everybody should be questioning it. People were always questioning the government and their intentions and their agendas. Now all of a sudden, because the wrong motherfuckers in office, right? The ones that the one guy that you don't want in office. Now all of a sudden, y'all want to fucking start throwing bail to the government. If this shit was Obama, nobody be uttering a fucking word. If Obama was the one doing this investigation, you all be for that shit. If Clinton was doing this investigation, you all be for that shit. That's the crazy part. And I don't even, like I told you, and I say it all the time, I don't know what to think about Elon. I don't know if he Bruce Wayne or if he fucking Lex Luthor. I don't know. But all I know is the shit that he's doing right now needs to be exposed. It at least needs to get the fucking American people thinking and looking in that direction. She fucking your best friend behind your back, and she keep telling you, no, I'm not. And y'all just keep, okay. You done seen the messages, and she's like, it wasn't me. Okay. At the least, you should be like, all right, it might be some shit. It might be something to this. Let me look into it. But because it's Trump and it's Elon, y'all willing to fucking throw the baby out with the bathwater.
A better, stronger, more prosperous USAID. Congressman, we're friends, and we've stayed in touch over the years. I appreciate the BUILD Act. That was bipartisan, and your leadership there. I am a little bit worried because I've heard President Trump
I'm
talk
looking at
about
Elon.
creating
I've been
a sovereign
critical of
wealth
Elon.
fund, perhaps,
Y'all new to this channel.
DFC's mission. Will you actually talk about the difference between DFC and sovereign wealth fund?
What I see is the DFC was designed for a specific purpose when we put it together. We wanted to move countries from aid to trade. That was our big thing. And I won't go into why I came up with that. We were on a Codell over in the DRC. And if they want to create a sovereign wealth fund, I think they should do that separately. And I think there was an executive order, in fact, to do that, which is good because if you put it in the DFC, it starts clouding the mission. You know, are we going to do development? Or are we going to do build the trust fund or the sovereign wealth fund? And you start clouding the mission and you get away from what I like to call purity of purpose. The DFC was for hardcore infrastructure projects that will bring in other investors in a region that needs those jobs and the opportunity so that we can wean them off foreign aid. You know, foreign aid by itself has not brought anybody into prosperity. But working together to build that infrastructure, to create that structure there, that brings in the opportunity, outside dollars, and then we create friendships and allies around the world.
Great,
increases
thank you.
trade.
Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to work. Let's do the work here in Congress in this committee, and let's build a better, stronger, more prosperous
And I commend
USAID.
you guys for saying that.
Could I just add something, if I could?
Gentleman's time has expired. I do thank the representative for wanting to work on the State Department reauthorization and look forward to working with you on that. The representative from Tennessee, Mr. Burchett, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to submit for the record an article why condoms cannot always be trusted. It's dated March 19th, 1993.
Are they trying to troll in Congress? Is that what they're doing right now?
It goes on to say that USA distributed around 800 million condoms last year, and this was in 93. The argument that condoms are not being distributed obviously has some holes in it, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Premerick, can you provide an example of USAID programs, a USAID program that was harmful to the U.S. foreign interests?
That's a good question. That's a really good question.
I probably didn't say your name right. I've said it.
That's okay, Congressman. Thank you.
Nobody gets.
That's a fantastic question right there.
Burchett, right? So we're good.
What's up, Jalen?
Now, I've heard a lot about the issue of China, and I agree that it's very important to counter China, but the last 4 years went in the opposite direction. The strong counter-China infrastructure that we had developed over at USAID was simply dismantled by the next administration. I can't think of anything that's harmed the developing world than the climate agenda. It has pushed all of these countries, especially in Africa, to go green. Solar, wind, EV, who produces all of those materials? It's China. And then on top of it, we tell them, no, you can't develop your own fossil fuel industry because it's anti-green. So what happens? They can't generate the revenues to create good jobs at home. They can't generate the revenues in order to finance their own health, education, and other needs. And it increases the price of energy, which does what to the poor? It hurts them. The climate agenda has done more in increasing poverty and increasing hunger than anything else. Of course, the resentment that's building up from around the world, that's much more conservative than we are on these woke things, it's extremely damaging. And look, a friend of mine at work provided me this morning with something that's very, very telling. Of the 19 of the top 20 countries receiving aid from USAID are part of the Belt and Road Initiative that China runs.
Sure.
I mean, this is showing that our efforts are not working. And I agree with Congressman Yoho and Administrator Natsios that the developing
What's
world,
up, Steph?
they want more trade, they want more investment. I don't care if you're speaking to government officials, business leaders, religious leaders. They don't want all of this other kind of aid where 50% of it is gone and we're violating their norms.
Let me get a couple more questions in to you, if that'd be all right. Did USAID assist in illegal immigration on our southern border?
I think that's something, it's both state and aid that's shared in that responsibility. PRM over at state, I think, is doing this. There was this whole thing about root causes and spending billions of dollars in Central America as if that would stem illegal immigration. But the problem with that argument is that these countries earn tens of billions of dollars of remittances. So the amount of aid that we're spending is such a tiny amount, it doesn't have any impact. If you want to stem illegal immigration, it's not foreign aid, it's closing the border. And we're seeing the results of it now.
Did USAID fund foreign terrorist organizations such as the Taliban?
You know, when I launched and led the Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, we had an internal risk assessment tool, and I pushed it immediately into red because we were sending money in places where we didn't have an actual presence. In a place like Afghanistan, we're not there. All of the international NGOs that we worked through, they left, and the Afghans that had worked for us, they fled or were killed. So we have absolutely no idea what's happening with that money, but it's being spent. Before I left as the COO, I put in a very tough vetting requirement that anybody who touches the money must go through our databases to see whether or not these are terrorists. But the next administration just removed it. So I think we can safely conclude that we are.
Those groups will hate us for free. Ted, does Congress authorize the spending for every individual USAID program? And that's to say, did Congress approve the $20,000
out there sitting on his
for the
goddamn
drag show
fishing
in
boat,
Ecuador, or the
trolling.
$47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia?
No, they don't. It goes, again, those things happen without the oversight. And it's hard to do oversight when you have a big organization like that. And that's why, again, you have to have the purity of purpose, and we have to be diligent when I was in Congress to be the ones that say, we're not spending this money.
Thank you.
But those two projects are State Department projects. They're not USAID projects. That is inaccurate, sir.
Did I say that? I didn't say that, sir, but thank you for putting words in my mouth. I would like to submit this article for the record, Mr. Chairman.
So ordered. Gentleman's time has expired, and I'd add, they don't just happen whether we authorize or deauthorize. They happen because of bad people in USAID or the State Department that put these forward programs. You don't belong there if you're putting these programs forward, and their time at those agencies will come to an end. I now recognize the representative from California, Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, a question for my colleagues. I know all of us probably remember Ebola from the 2014 outbreak that President Trump, a private citizen at the time, was particularly outspoken about and terrified of. For those of you who don't remember, Ebola is a disease that has about a 41% fatality rate, no vaccine, no treatment. It causes vomiting, muscle pain, and hemorrhagic bleeding.
Am I wrong? I thought an Ebola vaccine was created a while back. What's up, Kay? Am I wrong about that? Is she wrong? There's no vaccine for Ebola? I thought it was. Because it was a problem back in like the 80s, right? It was a problem in like the 80s, right? Like, as it came from the Congo. I thought they had a vaccine for it. Now all of a sudden it's not? Oh, they created and removed it? Because they tried to reintroduce Ebola like last year, right? Remember there was a couple of cases happening? But I thought we already had Yamin for that. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Pretty bad. I'd like all of my colleagues, please raise your hand if you would like Ebola in the United States.
They just said we had a couple of cases like last year. Matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, we had an Ebola outbreak under Obama. We had an Ebola outbreak under Obama. What the fuck is she talking about? Oh, man. The movie Osmosis Jones was about the Ebola. I know malaria got a mandatory. I don't know if Ebola probably does have a mandatory. I don't know. Mike knows more about that than I would know. Hey, Mike, is that a thing? Ebola isn't as contagious as people think. It's actually hard to transmit from person to person. But we had a issue here in America under the Obama administration that they just swept under the rug and nobody said shit about them. There is a treatment. Yeah, Ebola still exists. It's not like we just had issues with it last year and then we had a whole outbreak under the Obama administration. But I thought there was a vaccine for it.
No one?
You say your question again?
Would you like Ebola in the United States?
I'm glad the Trump administration approved Ebola response in
Yes,
their waivers.
on that point,
Try to shut him
I
up quick.
ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record a New York Times article, Life-Saving Aid Remains Halted Worldwide Despite Rubio's Promise.
So ordered, but it's not if you want to see the list.
And on Tuesday, Elon Musk, the billionaire tech entrepreneur empowered by President Trump to combat the agency, I'm quoting the article now, told reporters in the Oval Office that the administration had turned on funding for Ebola prevention and for HIV prevention. But in reality, again, quoting this article, the Ebola funding and virtually all of the HIV prevention funding remains frozen, according to USAID employees and several aid groups. And that is because the payment system called Phoenix that USAID relies on to disperse financial assistance has been inaccessible for weeks. So as you may know, Mr. Natsios, the outbreak of diseases, infectious diseases, is one of the big things that USAID helps to prevent, which is why I think we all should be so horrified that because of Elon Musk's illegal takeover of USAID, USAID is no longer able to screen travelers at airports leaving Uganda, where there is currently an Ebola outbreak that Americans have already...
Why is that USAID doing that? You hear what she said? USAID is no longer able to screen people coming from Uganda? Why is USAID doing that? That shouldn't even be the task of USAID. This bitch lying. Yo, this shit is hilarious.
Already been affected by. Mr. Natsios, you led USAID, correct? Do you think stopping the screening of travelers makes America more or less safe?
It makes us less safe, but I would add that there is, over the last 30 years, we built a system in 90 southern countries for monitoring all infectious diseases, and that's the early warning system. So if an outbreak of any disease takes place, we know about it. The countries where, like China, where COVID started, I certainly wouldn't advocate having an AID mission there, but the countries where there's an aid mission, the ministries of health have been trained, and there's a comprehensive early warning system to protect us. That system is, in terms of AID support for it, has been shut down.
That's right.
I might also add...
Sorry, I just want to reclaim my time because I have a few more questions, but I completely agree with you. So let's take my Republican colleagues at your word. You want to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse. I agree with that. You want to reform how USAID does its work. I agree with that too. In fact, I have bipartisan legislation to do that I'm happy to work with you, Mr. Mast, on. But let's talk about what's actually happening. So, Mr. Nasios, again, would you consider yourself liberal or woke in any way?
No.
Okay, great. Do you believe that USAID is a criminal agency plagued by waste, fraud, and abuse?
No.
And on February 4th, nearly the entire USAID workforce was notified that they were being placed on administrative leave. Mr. Natsios, would you say that removing the majority of the staff responsible for overseeing USAID's programs increases or decreases the risk of waste, fraud, and abuse?
Well, it increases it because the oversight of AID officers are there for oversight. That's what they do. 40% of the staff of AID are compliance officers. They spend all day trying to make sure these things don't happen. They do happen sometimes because of where we work.
And the USAID Inspector General agreed with you as the ranking member entered into the record, stated that all of USAID's oversight controls are largely non-operational. But instead of addressing this problem, Trump actually fired the Inspector General, who released this report the very next day. Mr. Natsios, does firing USAID's Inspector General generally reduce or increase waste, fraud, and abuse?
Well, Congresswoman, I'm trying to stay out of the vitriol here, but the Inspector General is there to investigate abuse. And let me tell you how it works. People think that they watch us and then they find this stuff and then they arrest us and all. That's not how it works. The 80% of the investigations done by aid are initiated by aid compliance officers who call the IG and say there's a problem, you need to come in here and fix it.
So
and then they work with them.
Just to clarify, not only is this freeze endangering Americans, but Trump and Musk's argument for stopping this assistance to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse is a complete lie because they are doing the opposite. That's because this is not about oversight, it's not about reform. It's about completely gutting foreign assistance itself. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
That was a waste of fucking time.
For her questions, and I would remind everybody that Ebola response has been restored, 250,000 through IOM, 1.5 million through UNICEF, another 250,000 IRFC, and others. The list goes on. And we should be supporting the correct programs. Uganda was brought up, and I would say, as an example there was a program, $5.5 million for promoting LGBT acceptance in Uganda. That is not life-saving, and that's not combating Ebola. Gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Green, is now recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Mass, and I appreciate your leadership, and I look forward to working alongside you to bring needed reform to our diplomatic strategy. We certainly have a lot of work to do, and this hearing is just the beginning. Accountability is coming. Thank you also to our witnesses today. The corruption going on behind USAID's doors has been a wake-up call for all Americans. As chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, I spent the last 2 years exposing the Biden administration's sabotage of our border and the policies that kept America safe. I saw firsthand their willful refusal to protect this country. Under the guise of foreign aid, USAID has been an unapologetic front for a far-left agenda. It has become self-evident there weren't a handful of foolish policies, but rather a coordinated strategy of radical, idiotic, and often anti-American priorities. Idiotic, you say? Millions to teach Moroccans how to make pottery? The Moroccans were making pottery before we were a country. This entire debate today and the crocodile tears from Democrats just goes to show what's wrong with this town. Not a single Democrat I've heard has expressed dismay.
I don't disagree with that. However, there's nothing wrong with getting a second opinion. You know, I'm in IT. That's what I do. System administrator. If I get some shit wrong, they can go to another IT guy and he might fix the shit, or maybe I missed. You go to a mechanic, the mechanic might tell you it might be the alternator. You go to another mechanic, it's just your goddamn fucking spark plugs. If a doctor, you go to a doctor, the doctor said, oh, you got ball cancer. You go get a second opinion, the doctor, that's not ball cancer. You just need to fucking wash your ass better. I don't know. But you can get a second opinion. Nothing wrong with that. Checks and balances. I'm not going to believe the first expert I see. If I see something wrong, one expert tell. Matter of fact, case in point. Remember back in like the 90s when we found out, was it 90s or early 2000s? We found out all of those scientists, right? They were saying, there's nothing wrong with Coca-Cola. You just got to burn more calories than you take in. There's nothing wrong with drinking Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is perfectly safe. It's perfectly healthy. Did we found out all those fucking scientists was getting paid by Coca-Cola to say that shit? It's the same fucking thing. It's always a possibility for corruption in anything. In anything. They told us for 4 years that for 4 years, if you don't take this thing in your arm, you're going to fucking die. It's got 99% efficacy, 99% efficacy. Then it dropped to 75%. Then it dropped to 65%. And then they just stopped talking about the efficacy rate of the amine. Then come to find out they were paid to fucking tell you that. Then we got a bunch of motherfuckers dying suddenly. So excuse me if I don't fucking believe the experts off the fucking rip, off the fucking muscle. I appreciate it, Rudy. Here's some money for you when you lose your job for live stream. Oh man, that's hilarious. Oh goodness gracious. All right, let's keep moving.
At the many examples of crazy, wasteful spending. I don't understand the objection to a deep dive in how we spend our money, but perhaps it's the fact that over the last several weeks, a massive surge has occurred in the search for a criminal defense attorney. That probably says it all. 5 times in this city, any other city in the nation.
That's true.
I'd like to remind the committee that President Kennedy unilaterally created USAID through an executive order in 1961. Yet the President Trump, orders a momentary pause after winning a mandate for reform, and Democrats cry, constitutional crisis. This is after 4 years of reckless spending and unrepentant lawlessness from the Biden administration. I want the American people to understand how this works in Washington. As long as you're spending other people's money, no one bats an eye. But the second you want to save taxpayer dollars, the swamp cries wolf, or in this case, unprecedented constitutional crisis. This breathless, fake outrage from the left is utterly insane. And you know what the American people, you know they can see right through it. The generosity of Americans and the blessing of giving aid to others has always been one of our most valuable tools for diplomacy.
I'm happy you recognize that we're a constitutional republic and not a
championing aid to our
democracy.
fellow man.
Appreciate
But
that.
lawless bureaucrats have poisoned that goodwill. Many USAID programs are wasteful and actively sabotage our diplomatic relationships by forcing woke ideology on our partners. Just look at PEPFAR, a beacon of hope in the fight against HIV/AIDS, yet the Biden administration even weaponized this crucial program, jeopardizing lives and undermining our relationship with African nations. Under Administrator Powers, our message to Africa was explicit, as it was heinous. Abort your babies and violate your religious convictions, or we won't grant you life-saving aid. Let me be crystal clear to those who've been complicit in this betrayal. Firing those involved is just a start. We have a long way to go. And one last point. I want to correct the record on a couple of things. First, Elon Musk and the team that is working does not have access to personal data. They don't have access to your Social Security number. That is a lie. Elon Musk does have a security clearance. He has a top secret security clearance. By God, he makes the rockets for NASA. But the suggestion that he somehow can't be trusted to dig into how we're spending our money is nothing but a smokescreen to hide the corruption and the wasteful spending that has occurred there. And I am personally offended at the left's continued references to 19-year-olds and 21-year-olds in their doing work.
You know what? He brings up a very good point. Shout out to Jonah, man. We did a stream. You know who was running the White House for the most part back during Joe Nichols' campaign or during Joe Nichols' term? Go look up a group called West Exec Partners. You guys talk about Elon's not an elected, he's not an elected official. Go look up West Exec Partners and see what their role is in government. None of them are elected officials. Most of them are former agents for the agency and some other shit, but none of them are cabinet members. Go look and see who was running that fucking administration for the last 4 years. Go look into West Exec Partners.
There are 19-year-olds who have won the Medal of Honor defending this country. Just because you're 19 doesn't mean you're some child who can't be trusted. It is offensive. And if you're 19 years old out there, 20 years old, and you're serving this country, by God, your service matters. Keep serving. We thank you for that. It would appear that I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
And with that, yo, I got to get out of here. I got to go take care of this situation real fast. I got to go take care of some stuff real quick. If you're new, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification icon. It'll let you know when I got new content coming out. Share the stream, guys. Let people know we live, or we were live. You catching the replay, leave a comment. Let me know how I'm doing. I can use that constructive criticism. You want to go, donate to the channel, $ Cannon Hotep on Cash App, Super Chats, Rumble Rants, always welcome. What's today, Thursday? Tonight, I will not be doing a show for Hotep's Been Told You After Party. I will be at a concert with the wife. So, if I get back in time, then maybe. But more than likely, I'll just catch y'all tomorrow morning. Same bat time, same bat channel. Anyway, guys, until next time, it's Cannon Hotep saying be blessed, stay strapped, don't miss. And don't worry about tomorrow, guys. Tomorrow got enough problems of its own. Worry about today. Holla at y'all.
Don't relax and take notes. Niggas need to wake up. Niggas need to relax and take notes. Niggas need to wake up. Niggas need to relax and take notes.